Hey, I am Alice Keeler. I don't even know my name this morning. I need more coffee. I'm Alice Keeler, and I'm here with Anna Hartrapt as we are talking about reading strategies and how to support struggling readers. So, we've been working on this online course where we've been selecting different tools and saying what reading strategies these tools support. So, what we were looking at this week is wordwall.net. Now, I'm a math teacher, so I haven't been using wordwall.net. But when I logged in there, it actually had all of these great templates that I could use to create all kinds of games and activities with my students. And it looks pretty cool. So, Anna, why don't you explain what you like about wordwall.net?
Thanks, Alice. Good morning. There's a lot to like about Wordwall. One thing I love is that they have a community of pre-made materials that can save so much time. So I definitely would suggest checking out the community before you make something. Even if you're altering the template, just having a template to start with is so much easier than make a text box, make another text box. All of that takes a lot of time.
It does. And we went in and we found one on the matchup type. So they had some game show templates and some crossword puzzle templates. And I don't know if crossword puzzles are good for students who have reading difficulties, but obviously not all of those templates are going to be good for students who are struggling readers. So what is it about wordwall.net that says, hey, you might want to consider this if you have students who are struggling readers? And most likely you have students who are struggling readers.
So some of the things I love about Wordwall are the fact that it's going to take typing out of the equation. So for a student who's proficient with spelling, with typing, they've got really all the skills. It's not going to be a big deal if they have to type in a word. But for a student who's a struggling reader, to have them stop in the middle of an assignment and think about, okay, how do I spell that? Where's the key for it? You're going to be drawing on so many other things cognitively, and you're going to lose the one thing that you're trying to measure, which is whatever that word is that's missing, or whatever if it's a math problem. You're just getting really far away from the thing you're trying to measure, and you're drawing on other skills.
So let me reword that. You're trying to assess or see if students know a certain piece of information, but when we ask them to do an activity, it may be the activity or the demand of what they're trying to do that distracts from them being able to demonstrate what you're actually trying to test or assess.
Exactly.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and add your slides here. We're here today to really talk about reading strategies and not necessarily wordwall.net. So what reading strategy did you want to share today?
So today I just wanted to talk a little bit about designing digital assignments. So in Wordwall, they have all of these assignments pre-made for you in the community. And if you're using Wordwall, you're making a digital assignment, whether that's going to be something you're going to do in class or you're going to assign it as homework. But I wanted to talk about a few principles of how you can make sure that your assignments, like you said, Alice, are getting to the thing you want to measure, and a few tips for making them more inclusive for all students. So for students who are struggling readers, making sure that your assignment isn't going to be so challenging for them that they're not able to participate. So one thing that I love that Wordwall does is a lot of their activities offer a word bank. So I highlighted two that I like a lot: the matchup option and the missing word option. Both of these options, they allow you to just drag and drop the words. So for one, that feels a little more fun than typing something in. And two, students are not spending any time thinking about how to spell something or making a text box. Other apps where you have to type something in, or just giving a student a PDF and saying to fill it in themselves, that is going to be frustrating. That's going to really take away from whatever it is that you're trying to get the student to think about. So I love that Wordwall just takes that out of the equation, and they make it so that you can just drag and drop words. Another thing that I recommend is limiting the choices. So a lot of these on the Wordwall community that I saw, maybe you wanted to get a bunch of items all on one page. And if you're doing something in class and you're highlighting maybe just one item at a time, that's okay. But when you're assigning something to students, I really like to think about, if you think about their grade level and then maybe multiply that by 2. So if it's a second grade student, you really don't want to have more than 4 choices on a screen, because otherwise the student is spending so long keeping the choices in mind, going back to the prompt, that they're going to probably get lost in that and spending less time thinking about the actual prompt itself.
So I have a question. I teach high school, so if I have 12th graders, which I do, and I double that, that's 24. Is 24 too many choices, or is that right?
That's a good point. I think that probably would be too many. So maybe we would cap it at somewhere around 10 choices. So once you've reached about 10 choices, that's probably going to be plenty.
Are any of these like extra words? So that there's 8 blanks, 10 words, something like that?
That's a good question. So I think that's where you can start to differentiate. Maybe for students who are more proficient, you can put in some of those distractors. Like you can give them some extra options. But for the most part, I don't see a lot of value in having those other distractors, because the student, when you're giving an assignment, you want the student, their goal is for them to do it successfully and to solidify their learning at the end of it. So if they turned in the assignment and they put in a word that was a distractor or wasn't the correct answer, by the time you've turned that back around to them, they're going to be sitting with that incorrect piece of information for so long, and they're not going to have that immediate feedback.
But what about, does Wordwall let you have extra words, or is it just straight one-to-one?
So Wordwall, it's flexible for the community templates. It depends on whoever made it, if there are extras. So you certainly can add extra if you want to.
Okay. Now you and I had looked at, I see you've got the matchup on here. We had chosen a wordwall.net activity, and it was pretty good, right? It was all on the long A sound, and it was just which word fits in the blank. So I had a sentence with a missing word. But as anything that's online, it is a crapshoot as to the quality. So we should always analyze whatever it is that we see. So when you look at wordwall.net, what are some of the things that you're looking for in a pre-made activity that you'd say, well, I should probably modify this?
Good question. So I'm always going to check the sentence difficulty. So a lot of these are sentences that are filled in. I'm going to make sure that the surrounding words around the target words that you're trying to assess, choose from that word or that word, make sure that all the surrounding words aren't more challenging than the words you're trying to assess. That can happen unintentionally as teachers when we're coming up with sentences, and it's actually really hard to make your own assignments. So I would always recommend starting with, if you have access to a resource or a curriculum that you already have been given, and then modifying from there. That's going to be easier than just trying to come up with things from scratch, because when you come up with the same way with drag and drop words, coming up with things from scratch is the highest cognitive load. So always try to modify if possible.
Awesome, thanks. I was just taking a few notes over there in the chat. All right, so any last tips or suggestions about supporting struggling readers in terms of offering a word bank?
So one thing that I didn't see on Wordwall, but I would be interested to ask you about this, Alice. I always love to offer a read aloud option. So I was trying to think how, as a teacher, you could either embed your own reading of the sentences, or maybe this is a place for possibly immersive reader, just another way to offer read aloud.
I didn't try immersive reader on Wordwall. In fact, I don't think I've ever tried immersive reader on an interactive site, but now I'm realizing that I'm going to need to, because obviously we do ask our students to do a lot of interactive type activities. And for our students who are struggling readers, having a tool that will read to them obviously would be very helpful. And one of my favorite tools is immersive reader. Good question. You could use Mote or Screencastify or any kind of these tools to record your voice where you are reading and putting it into a Google form or something like this, for sure.
Sounds good. Another thing that I wanted to suggest, so Wordwall has lots of different options. And if you're choosing between either true, false, if you're thinking, oh, I want to make a true, false quiz, I would recommend trying to rethink of that as grouping, because the true, false, the setup, it can be confusing for students, and sometimes they'll get lost in just the wording and what it means. If something, trying to think about, okay, does that mean that this is false or this is true? If you rethink
can I reword this as I'm trying to type a little bit? Yes. Note, right? The setup of true false can be confusing because they might misread the sentence, not whether or not they understand the content.
Exactly. So instead, I think, especially when you're trying to have more active practice, it's better to try grouping items. So in this example, they have different sentences, and the student's trying to identify, is that sentence a theme or not a theme? So you could take any of the sentences, and the prompt could be, a true friend will always be there for you. Is that a theme? True, false. So with the true, false, you're kind of stepping away from the prompt and trying to evaluate whether it's true or false. And so a more direct measure is just to move that sentence into, is that a theme or not a theme? So just a slight modification in how. What's that?
So that's a great tip. So so I'm teach math, right? And so a lot of times I will give them a definition, true or false, this is a trapezoid. So I could give them several things that I might put into a true, false. So instead saying trapezoid, not a trapezoid, and allow them to group those up instead.
Exactly. And not that true, false isn't helpful. I think that that's a great place for maybe more of like a cumulative test. But while you're still learning a concept, grouping just feels less like test-like. And it's also helping you associate, because at the end of a true false question, what you're left with is, okay, that was either true or false. But there's not a lot of meaning in that. And so in this way, if you're grouping it, then I'm thinking, okay, a true friend will always be there for you. That is a theme. So I've got that association between the statement and the thing that I'm actually trying to group it towards. Okay. And then another thing which I love about Wordwall, and Alice, I'm sure you're going to love this, is whenever possible, gamify. Don't underestimate the power of a spinner. So here on the right, there was a Wordwall exercise, spin the wheel and write a matching sentence. So all of these prompts, they would be equally challenging for the student. They're going to write a sentence regardless, but the fact that they get to spin first and then write the sentence, you're taking a lot of the pressure off of the prompt, write the sentence, and you're having the student, they're thinking about which one is it going to be, and you're going to see a lot less resistance to the prompt if you just put a spinner in.
I am totally trying this when I get back. We go back to school on the 4th, so this will be great. I also really like these, what are they, groundhogs or something? A fun graphic definitely helps students to relax a little more and feel like they're not under a testing pressure. When students are under pressure, they're not going to do their best, which is why I just please stop it with the time math tests. You made a comment the other day that we were chatting about, having students be timed with reading or something like that is one of the worst things that we can do. I mean, it's fight or flight. We're not going to have students demonstrate their best recall when you're under stress, for sure. So anything that we can do to make it seem less stressful, we're going to be able to get a better assessment, I think.
Absolutely. All right. And so just to leave you with Wordwall or any assignment, ask yourself one last, the same way that you ask students to check their work before you are done with an assignment, just ask yourself, what am I really measuring here? Or what demands am I asking of the students? What do they have to understand in order to even do the tasks? Are the directions broken out into steps so that a student can clearly see what they need to do in sequence? What do they have to know how to spell? What do they have to write? All of those things are demanding for students. And if you're not really careful as an instructor about what demands your assessment is asking, you may think, oh, a student doesn't know how to do this, but actually it was possibly just based on how you assessed it or how you asked the question. And so anytime you're coming up with an assignment, you really want to get right to the point and ask your questions in the least demanding way possible so that you can have more time for inquiry and exploration and less time just for testing.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing these reading strategies, and we'll do this again soon.
Sounds fun. Bye, Alice.
Bye.